Welcome to the show. My name's Ben, and today I'll be talking you through some of the key issues relating to a crucial business concept, risk management. I want to start today with a proposition. I want you to imagine you're standing on a brightly lit stage. You know, the lights are blinding, there's a cheering audience, there's a host in a sparkly suit standing right in front of you holding a microphone. On the table beside you is a stack of cash, £12,000, ready for you to take home. But the host gives you a choice. Instead of taking the money, you can pick one of two mystery boxes. One contains a £1 prize, the other contains a £100,000 prize. So here's the question for everyone listening. What do? Do you take the sure thing, the 12 grand, or do you play the game and risk opening one of the two boxes? It's such a fascinating question because it immediately strips away all the business jargon and gets right to the core of human psychology, which is key to understanding risk, whether you're on a game show or you're in a corporate boardroom. There isn't actually a correct answer here, not in the traditional sense. What you're really testing is something called risk appetite, which is the first stage of risk management. If you'd grabbed the £12,000 because you've got bills to pay, you're risk averse. You prioritise certainty and you avoid variation. Even though there's a huge potential upside of deciding to choose one of the two boxes, the pain of possibly walking away with £1 is just too great. You prefer the sure thing. I'm pretty sure this is me. If you'd give up the £12,000 of certain money for the chance to open a box, hoping for the life-changing £100,000, you're risk-seeking. You're actively chasing that variation, the uncertainty, in the hope of a higher return. You're willing to accept the very real possibility you'll walk away with basically nothing just for a shot at the big prize. Finally, if you strip away all the emotion, the fear of losing, the greed for winning, and you're just a cold calculating machine, then you're what we call risk neutral. If you're risk neutral, you just look at the maths. You calculate the expected value of the boxes, and we'll look at this in more detail later, but you have a 50% chance of getting £1. You've got a 50% chance of getting £100,000. So 50% of £1 plus 50% of £100,000 is £50,000 and 50 pence. So a risk neutral person looks at the offer of £12,000, that certain pile of cash, and compares it to the average value they'd receive from choosing a box, which is about £50,000, and says, well, the math clearly says pick the box, that has the higher return. So risk neutral people don't specifically care about the risk, only that the return reasonably compensates them for the extra risk of picking the box. But that's your problem. In the real world, you can't pay your mortgage with expected values. Walking away with £1 when you could have had 12,000 is very painful. And that's exactly why businesses spend so much time and money on risk management. Because unlike a game show, if a business picks the wrong box, they don't just lose a prize, they can go bankrupt, they can face fines, people can lose their jobs. So that's our mission for this podcast. We're going to move from the game show floor to the boardroom. We need to figure out what risk actually is. And spoiler alert, it's not just bad things happening. And we're going to look at the specific tools companies use to survive, like the TARA model, and even how they use AI to predict the future. It's worth noting right at the start, the goal isn't to eliminate risk. I mean, that's impossible. If you eliminate all risk, you usually eliminate all profit too. The goal is to understand the variation in future outcomes so that you can make a rational choice. This is often where people get stuck when they think about risk. Because usually when we hear the word risk, we think of danger, losing money, breaking a leg, crashing the car. But for businesses, the definition we're working with is simply that risk is possible variation in future outcomes or returns. And the formula for that is risk equals impact times likelihood. It's a neutral term. Variation can go both ways. That there's downside risk, which is what we usually worry about. A product failing, a factory burning down. That's where the outcome is worse than expected, so there's a negative impact on our business. But there's also upside risk. Risk can be an opportunity. A great example would be launching a new product. There's a risk of variation in how well it sells. Maybe there's a 45% chance sales are low and you only earn £25 million. That's the downside, or the bad box in our game show. But there's a 55% chance that sales are higher than expected and you earn 75 million. That uncertainty, that possibility of the higher outcome, is also a form of risk. It's a deviation from the average for whatever reason, increased public demand, better than expected economic growth, whatever. But we've ended up with a more positive outcome. So risk management isn't about building walls to keep bad things out. It's also about positioning yourself to catch the good things. It helps companies evaluate strategic options like expansion or acquisitions by understanding the full range of what might happen. If you don't understand the upside risk, you might play it too safe and miss out on that £100,000 box. But let's be honest, most of the time the panic in the boardroom is about the bad stuff. So why do companies bother with all this paperwork and analysis? Are they just neurotic, or is there like a regulatory gun to their heads? The answer is it's a bit of both, plus a sort of survival instinct. There are really three main drivers here for businesses to undertake risk management. First, there's resilience. Unexpected events happen, market downturns, supply chain failures. If you haven't managed your risk and planned ahead, these things can wipe you out. Risk management helps you identify threats before they materialise so you can ensure business continuity. So our first driver for risk management is really survival, just keeping the lights on. Number two is stakeholders. Investors and insurers demand risk management. If you have effective risk management, you get lower insurance premiums, you get better credit ratings. It makes you more attractive to investors because you look like you're a safe pair of hands. You look like you know what you're doing, and it reduces the chances that the business will be hit by unexpected risks and underperform, which would of course lose those insurers and investors money. And the third one, the one nobody likes but everyone has to deal with, is legal requirements, the regulators. Companies face massive scrutiny. You have things like the UK Corporate Governance Code or Sarbanes-Oxley in the US. If you don't manage risk, especially around financial reporting or safety, you're looking at fines, sanctions, possibly even jail time for directors. So risk management isn't optional. Especially for regulated or listed companies, it's a requirement. To make this concrete, let's imagine a company. Let's call them ZPLC, a furniture manufacturer who's having a nightmare week. They've done some risk identification, which is the next stage of risk management after they've decided on their risk appetite. And the directors of ZPLC have discovered they're facing a number of risks. They've discovered operational risks. So machinery failures are causing daily production delays, creating bottlenecks and forcing them to pay overtime to catch up. Then they have financial risk. They've got loans to repay, but interest rates are rising. That's a variation in cash flow caused by external economic factors. Suddenly their debt's more expensive. And that's scary because it's totally out of their control. They can't control the central bank. New safety regulations have just been put into law, leading to compliance risk. ZPLC urgently needs to update its manufacturing processes to match them, or they're breaking the law. So there's a forced cost there. And they're having some tech issues too. There's been a phishing attempt that threatened their customer data and disrupted online sales, so they're facing significant cyber risk. That's a huge reputational and operational threat. If customers don't trust you with their credit card, you're pretty much done. And finally, the big stuff, strategic risk. This is the one that often kills companies slowly. They've discovered consumer tastes are changing. Competitors are launching eco-friendly furniture, and ZPLC is seeing reduced demand. Their entire strategy might be becoming obsolete, and there's no internal control in the world that will fix that. Just good old-fashioned strategic change by the directors. For a company like ZPLC, it's a lot to juggle. Operational, financial, compliance, cyber, strategic. If I'm the CEO of ZPLC, I'm probably hiding under my desk. So how do you actually organise this chaos? You can't just run around putting out fires. And that's where the frameworks come in. You need a way to filter these risks, to prioritise them. You can't treat a broken printer with the same urgency as a factory fire. And the main tool for that, which we're going to highlight in this session, is the probability versus impact matrix. You may have heard this called the TARA model as well. TARA is the acronym for the strategies you use after you've mapped the risks that you've identified onto the TARA matrix. You map them based on two axes. How likely is the risk to happen? That's probability. And how bad will it be if it does? That's impact. The model is the key part of the next stage of risk management, which is risk evaluation and response. Okay, let's play this model out. Let's run through 4 distinct scenarios about a company that's thinking about building a leisure facility for a local council. We'll do these like a rapid fire round, and we can think about which of the TARA strategies, so transfer, avoid, reduce, or accept, we should use. Ready? Okay, let's go. Scenario 1. Our planned leisure centre would have a swimming pool. There's a risk that cracks could appear in the pool walls, which has occasionally happened in other centres. If it happens, you have to close the pool for months and undertake expensive repairs. It's rare, so it's a low probability, but if it happens, the financial impact is very high. What do? Under TARA, this is a classic case for transfer. We don't try and fix the problem because the event is unlikely to happen, so it doesn't make sense to stop the business or rebuild the whole pool just in case. But the impact is so high it could ruin us. So we transfer that risk to a third party, usually an insurer. You pay a premium, and if the cracks appear, they pay for the repairs and the lost revenue. You're transferring the financial shock to someone with deeper pockets. It's essentially buying peace of mind. Scenario 2. Your leisure centre will be operating in City A. The local councils announced they're going to raise business rates as high as allowed. This is virtually guaranteed to happen, so high probability. The cost would be an extra $1.5 million a year for the leisure centre, which pushes the project into projected loss, so really high impact. This is a red alert, high probability and high impact. The TARA strategy here is avoid. You stop, you don't build there, you cancel the project. If a risk is almost certain to happen and it will definitely destroy the project's viability, you cannot manage it. And you can't insure against a certainty, so you have to walk away. You avoid the activity entirely. It's brutal, but sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes the best move is just not to play. Now, just note, you could also use this as a way to try and fundamentally change the project. If this new tax makes it unaffordable, maybe you need to go back to the council and ask for more money or an exemption from the rates rise. They may be willing to play ball if they really want that leisure centre built. If not, we walk away. Okay, scenario 3, income fraud. Your leisure centre will employ lots of temporary staff handling cash. It's very likely some money might go missing. There's high probability. But of course your staff can't steal the whole building, so the financial impact is relatively low. For high probability but low impact, we reduce. So we don't just fire everybody or close the project down. We can't stop hiring staff, and we also can't insure against every £5 that goes missing. The premiums will be higher than the loss. So you implement internal controls to reduce the likelihood. You install CCTV, you verify banking daily, you require 2 staff members to handle cash together, so segregation of duties. You're reducing the risk to a manageable level using internal controls. It's all about making it harder for the risk to happen. So that's what happens if we have high probability but low impact. The final scenario, let's say there's a chance that the Wi-Fi that we're going to use in the leisure centre is going to break down. This has only happened very rarely in other leisure centres, so it's low likelihood, and if it does, it may mean that until it's repaired in a day or so, we might have to only accept cash payments from visitors, so pretty low impact. What do? Well, in this quadrant of the TARA matrix, low probability, low impact, we accept. We just do nothing. Now, that feels kind of wrong for a business strategy, doesn't it? Just accept it. It sounds kind of lazy. It feels counterintuitive, but it's efficient. The cost of setting up insurance or complex controls will be more expensive than just fixing the problem if it happens. You just accept it might occur and you deal with it then. It's not worth the paperwork to do anything else. So, transfer, avoid, reduce, accept, TARA. It's a really clean way to make decisions. It stops you from, freaking out over small things and ignoring the big things. It forces you to be objective about where your threats actually are. But, and there's always a but with these things, how do we measure all this? We talked about high impact and low impact, but businesses run on numbers. We need to talk about the maths. And this brings us right back to our game show maths. In business, this is called expected value, or EV, the weighted average. EVs help managers make decisions by combining the probabilities of different outcomes. For example, we can think about a marketing example that hopefully highlights how this works and more importantly, where it can fail. Let's run some numbers. Company H is thinking about launching a new advertising campaign. There are 3 possible outcomes here. Outcome 1, the campaign is a success. There's a 35% chance of this, and it's so successful it's going to bring us an extra £35,000 in profit. Possible outcome 2 is neutral. There's a 45% chance the campaign has no impact on sales at all, and we make 0 extra profit. Option 3, the marketing campaign is a failure. There's a 20% chance of this, but customers hate the campaign and you actually lose £5,000. So in this case, we've got 3 options: success, neutral, or failure. How do we calculate the expected value of what the campaign will earn us, and therefore if it's worth doing or not? Well, what we do is we multiply each outcome by its probability and then add them all up. So 35,000 times 35%, 0.35, plus 0, our neutral option, times 0.45, plus negative 5,000, our failure option, and it's multiplied by its probability of 20%, or 0.2. If you do that sum, you get an expected value of positive £11,250. So the computer says yes, the project is worth over 11 grand. You should do it. It's a no-brainer. But this is where we have to urge caution. This is where I start waving a red flag, because that number, £11,250, is a lie. Now, that might sound like a strong word for a mathematical result, but in business, it can really be a misleading figure to use to make your decisions. Why? Well, it's a theoretical average. It's a fake number. Look at the possible outcomes again. We can make £35,000, we can make 0, or we can lose £5,000. Is making £11,250 actually one of the options? No, it's none of them. It's an average of a hypothetical long run. You'll never actually earn the expected value. It's just an average of what would happen if you ran this campaign 1,000 times. But if you're only doing the campaign once, there's a bigger danger. The EV is positive, so a manager might sign off on it immediately thinking, oh, it's fantastic, it's going to make me £11,250. But the single number hides the fact there is a 20% chance of losing money. The calculation smooths over that danger. It hides the downside risk. This is often called the floor of averages. If that £5,000 loss would bankrupt the company, say, your cash flow is really tight, the fact that the average result is positive doesn't matter. You're still taking a 1 in 5 shot at disaster. Averages are comfortable, but they can deceive you. We get so fixated on the score, we forget the game itself. So, if expected value is a bit clunky and hides the extremes, what's the upgrade? Well, we have AI now. Surely we can do better than simple weighted averages. The future, and really the present for top companies, is simulation. Specifically, what-if simulations. Companies like Tesla and Apple use this modelling approach when considering risks. So for Tesla, it might do this with the batteries that it uses in its electric vehicles. This feels like a very relevant example given how, volatile supply chains in the real world have been lately. Instead of just saying, on average, we'll have enough batteries, a company like Tesla uses AI to model specific shocks. So what if raw material scarcity like lithium or nickel delays supply for 3 months? They don't just guess, they run a simulation. What would that actually look like? Well, for a simulation, it's a 3-step process. Step 1, model the shock. So they reduce the available supply in the computer model by, say, 30 to 50%. They force the model to deal with the crisis. Step 2, assess the production impact. So the model figures out which specific gigafactory becomes the bottleneck. Does production of the Model 3 slow down? Does the Model Y stop entirely? Step 3 is then financial projection. The system calculates the lost revenue from vehicles that aren't delivered. It estimates the cost inflation of trying to find emergency suppliers. It forecasts inventory pileup. A lot of detail. Now, this is miles away from our simple original formula of risk equals impact times likelihood. It allows you to see the ripple effects. It moves from a static snapshot like the expected value to a dynamic movie of the future. It's using AI to increase accuracy by factoring in thousands of variables that a human brain or a simple spreadsheet just can't handle. It's almost like you're stress testing the company, your virtual world, before the real world has a chance to break it. It's a fire alarm drill for your finances. So we've gone from a simple game show choice to AI modelling of global supply chains. It's been quite a journey. Hopefully we've shown that risk management isn't just a box-ticking exercise, it's the central nervous system of a business. It helps you decide on what your reaction should be to the risks in the world around you. Let's try and pull this all together. What are the big takeaways then? First, risk is simply variation. It's the difference between what you expect and what you get. It can be downside, like machinery breaking, or upside, like a product selling better than expected. We learn to handle that variation. We have to identify our risks and then evaluate them using the TARA framework. That gives you a roadmap. You transfer the high impact rare stuff to insurers, you avoid the guaranteed disasters, you reduce the likely but small risks with controls, and you accept the small stuff you can't be bothered to fix. And finally, we looked at the maths. Expected value gives us a weighted average to help us make decisions, but we have to be really careful. They can be misleading because they hide the extremes, which is why modern companies are moving toward detailed simulations to ask, what if something happens? But there's one final thing we need to mention. Risk management also emphasises monitoring. You can't just do this once and forget about it. The environment around us changes so rapidly, and at the moment it feels like it's changing ever more rapidly. Let's look at our furniture company example that we talked about earlier, ZPLC. Consumer taste shifted, interest rates went up. Risks that were low probability yesterday might be high probability today. You have to constantly ask, have the risks changed? And are the controls that we put in place to manage them working? It's a never-ending process. If you stop looking, you get hit. Risk management has to be part of your culture. I want to leave you with a thought today that brings us right back to our game show stage. In the game show, the host tells you exactly what's in the boxes, £1 or £100,000. You know the odds are 50-50. You have perfect information about the risk. But in business, do we ever really know what's in the boxes? Do we ever know the probability of each outcome? That's the scary part. We usually don't. We use models, we use TARA, we use expected values, we use AI to try and put numbers on things. But if the expected value hides the chance of total ruin, are we actually making rational decisions? Or are we just using maths to comfort ourselves while we reach for a mystery box that just might explode? That's the ultimate question. The maths gives us confidence, but it doesn't give us certainty. There are no right answers. Something to think about next time you're making a calculated risk. Thanks for listening. Feel free to follow this channel for more podcasts on key business strategy areas. See you next time.